My mother is a graphic designer, and growing up, her office was always at our house, and she had cameras, paints, charcoals, every sort of artistic medium available. Cameras are just what stuck. You know, I would always pull stuff out of her cabinets, and when I was younger I'd draw. But in high school I started taking pictures and decided I wanted to become a photographer. What kind of photographer at the time, I didn't know. Thinking about the kind of work I do, I suppose I used to always get these. Do you guys remember do you remember the Time Life anthologies that you would get at the end of every year with like your Time magazine subscription? The sort of, you know, they'd have the World War II sort of anthology looking back 50 years, you know. These would end up in the house, you know, in the closet, but I'd pull them out and look through the historical images, and I don't know. History was a big part of my childhood growing up as well, so history and images. I knew photography was what I wanted to do, and Tisch, the Tisch School of the Arts at NYU had an actual photography and imaging major. It wasn't part of a studio arts or a visual arts major like you'd find it at most universities. And that was the only place I really wanted to go. Luckily I got in, and I arrived in August of 2001 for my freshman year, and at the time I thought I wanted to maybe end up working in a career in fashion photography or commercial photography. Photojournalism was on my radar, but it wasn't, I hadn't decided on it at all. Photography was just something I loved. The business side of photography I didn't really completely understand. That also wasn't really on my radar yet at the time either. I thought maybe I could end up in film. I thought that things would change. And things did change very drastically 2 years into my, you know, or 2 weeks into my first year at college. You know, there was, 9/11 happened, and that, I figured out what I wanted to do a lot faster than I think I had initially planned. I think it helped me, but I think it is absolutely, I think it's totally unnecessary. I think that from an early age, we all have a formal education in photography because we're bombarded by imagery now more than we ever have been in human history, you know. We all, be it television, be it magazines, as a population, we're incredibly visually literate, you know. Everybody's got iPhones now, and we're all, you know, we're all taking pictures every single day, and pictures are a huge part of everybody's day-to-day lives. You know, most people, I feel, are good photographers, you know, or have an aesthetic sense sort of built into them now, just by the way that, as people were exposed to imagery. For me, as a Westerner, as an American, at times it can be difficult, primarily in terms of getting access to the things that I'm interested in looking at. There is a significant amount of distrust amongst Arabs and Muslims in that part of the world, you know, especially after the last 10 years of war and that followed 9/11. It's my job to sort of try to navigate that and allay those fears so I can do my work. But it's not always easy, and I'm not always successful. My passion, what drives me, what interests me is the Middle East itself, the Middle East, North Africa, the Arab world, and the greater Islamic world. I think that it's one of the most photographed regions in the world, but I also think it's one of the least understood. You know, not since the Berlin Wall fell in the late 80s have you seen, and the Soviet Union collapsed, have you seen a region so dramatically change in a short span of time. And we don't know yet if it's going to be, you know, necessarily for the better. Like, revolutions, in my experience, can start off with a lot of innocence, and then they, you know, a year down the line, things have gone, you know, things seem darker, basically. And so I'm interested in sort of the historical arc of the region as it changes. And to me, like, I'm not as interested in conflict as I'm interested in change. And I looked at those history books or those Time Life books growing up, and I don't know, history has always been a big part of what I do as well, I guess. So the camera is just a way for me to explore a region that I'm interested in and be part of its history. I think that, you know, really thinking about what stories you want to tell. You know, a lot of people go into any sort of hostile environment or conflict, and they just look for the light and the noise. You know, they look for, you know, for a man shooting a gun, or for these sort of iconic photographs of which there are an abundance. And I see the pictures now, and sometimes it can be hard to distinguish between Libya and Syria. And these pictures are still important. They still tell part of the story, but there is a lot of depth, and you know, there are 2 and 3 dimensions to each of these places. And you know, oftentimes it's not on the front lines where I find the pictures that I think are the most interesting. Working with a journalist can be an incredibly positive relationship, in my opinion. I mean, the only thing that is sort of different about it is you are collaborating on something, and you know, a lot of your work sort of depends on what they are writing, and that can dictate sort of the way you organize, you know, the shooting of the work in your head. If it works out well, I feel like both works can actually amplify. You know, the photography can amplify the writing, and the writing can amplify the photography. But it doesn't always work like that. But that's what I strive for, at least, to make it work like that. Wow, that's a really good question. No, I don't. I have never done an assignment in the United States. I've never worked as a professional photographer inside the United States. It's kind of fascinating to think about. The most important thing, as the industry has changed and continues to change, is to be very mobile. You've got to be willing to, you know, live outside of New York, to live outside of London, to live outside of Paris, to, you know, live in the area that you actually want to focus on. You know, move abroad. You know, get out of your comfort zone. That would be it, I'd say, is get out of your comfort zone. That's how you learn. Be bold. And believe in what you want to do.